What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the High Tempo Sports Podcast, episode 216. Back in the studio for another weekly episode is Matt Griffin. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, excited to be here. Big day in ball yesterday. So
yeah, it's been a very eventful last 48 hours for the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, for the rest of the NBA in general, but specifically for the Pistons, I mean, we had two back-to-back wins on Wednesday and Thursday night, and then yesterday the trade deadline where they were easily the most active team. I think they made 6 total trades, I'm pretty sure. And we kind of talked about this on last week's episode. If you have not listened to last week's episode, we basically kind of gave our trade deadline predictions per se, and we talked about the All-Star game. And I asked you, like, do you think there'll be more than 1.5 Pistons trades? And we kind of both agreed, like, probably not. It'll probably just be like one, like, decently big trade, and that's it. And we got 2 trades before Thursday even came, with the Fontecchio and Monte Morris trades. So I guess we can just dive right into the trades, to the Pistons trades, and start there.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about, obviously, the Pistons games the last couple nights, and then move on to the rest of the league. So let's start off with the big trade of the day, which I think we can all agree was the trade made with the New York Knicks. The Pistons sent out veteran shooters Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks to the New York Knicks in exchange for Quentin Grimes, Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, Ryan Arcidiacono, 2028 and 2029 second-round picks from the Knicks. We waived Arcidiacono, so Flynn and Fournier will stick around, but Quentin Grimes being the main addition here. Matt, obviously, I know you've probably had a lot of time to gather your thoughts on this trade.
I have, yeah.
How do you feel about it?
So I like it. I'm happy with the trade, I would say. I think that I think the reception to the trade has been interesting. There's been a lot of, like, the national media, thinks that we're idiots for it and stuff, and I get it to a degree because it's an awesome trade for the Knicks, and which it totally is, don't get me wrong. For sure. Totally is, but since it's an awesome trade for the Knicks, I think a lot of people are just like, oh, so, like, they, what the hell are the Pistons doing? Because, like, the Knicks, but I think, like, when you're watching this team every day, there was just sort of a not enough ball to go around a lot of times, it felt like, which sounds ridiculous for such a bad team. But from the perspective of developing young guys and trying to get a better understanding of what we need to build around them, I think that, letting the second unit, instead of Alec Burks taking over the second unit, now it's kind of Marcus Sasser's unit to run. Now he's got the keys to lineups when Cade and Ivy are out. Now we can lean in on the Marcus Sasser experience anytime that's the case, as opposed to Alec Burks being the guy with the big portion of the usage when that's the case.
Most definitely.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, Burks was playing well. Like, Burks has been shooting it really well, and that's all great, and he's going to really help the Knicks.
Which is crazy that he got over to 40% from 3 on the season after that.
Up and
terrible.
down.
Like, it's probably the weirdest, like, the most inconsistent 40% season I've seen in a while.
It really is. It's been a roller coaster. Like, this month he's been unbelievable, but he had such a bad cold stretch earlier, or before this month, I guess, basically in, like, December, I want to say. But, yeah, I think, like, so you move off of him. You get back Quentin Grimes, who to me is – He was starting to fall out of favor with the Knicks a little bit. There was like a little bit of a rift between him and Thibodeau. It's probably tough a little bit to be a role player on the Knicks, to be completely honest with you, which is no fault of their own because what they're doing is working. But you don't really get the ball. Like, it's a lot of isolation and stuff. And Quentin Grimes probably wanted a little bit more responsibility, and he will get a little bit more responsibility. But at the end of the day, he is just sort of a 3-and-D wing, but like quite a good one in my opinion. He's a very aggressive defender, so I'm curious to see how that works out with a little bit less rim protection behind him. But he's a very good off-ball offensive player. Like, he's a good shooter. He's got a very quick trigger. He's not like, you don't want him like driving from a standstill or anything, but if somebody closes out on him, like, I trust him to sort of make a decision off of that or drive off of that. You don't want him. I saw somebody say you don't want him dribbling more than 2 times, and I think that's a good way to put it. Okay. But you do trust him for 2 dribbles, like, to get to the rim and make a decision there. And he played with Sasser in college, so that's pretty cool. But he's just a good fit. Like, you can play him 2 or 3, just as a smaller wing, essentially, that has a little bit of guard skills and decision-making skills. I'm excited to see how he fits with us. The rest of the Knicks trade, I mean, was just kind of filler in my opinion. I don't anticipate seeing much like Fournier.
I mean, maybe with Monty Williams, you never really know who he favors, but yeah, definitely. This was Grimes is the main piece here. I mean, a guy that you already mentioned this, but like kind of fell out of the rotation. I think he like requested a trade earlier in the season with the Knicks, or at least said that he was unhappy with his current role. But last year, he started almost every game with the Knicks. They were a playoff caliber team. He was kind of their point of attack defensive guy for a good defensive team. And he averaged almost 12 points per game on 38% from three on almost 6 3-point attempts a night. So like he definitely had a pretty good role on a good team last year. And I think that that's going to help us a lot in the long run. I know a lot of fans, you talked about like the discourse has been really, it's been back and forth on whether or not we like this or not. And I've come to like not the realization, because I kind of felt this way like from the trade. Like obviously it sucks not getting a pick, like a first round pick in the trade. But I don't think we were getting Grimes and a pick, you know? So it's
agreed.
like, and I think if it came down to one of those heavily protected Knicks picks that they have, because they have a bunch of them, or Quentin Grimes, if you're a Pistons fan, you got to take Quentin Grimes.
Absolutely.
We need players that can play right now to kind of help build this core, not a pick that is probably going to be in the late 20s or something, you know? So I think that they made the right move. Obviously, I think Troy Weaver admitted this morning in their little post-trade deadline press conference there that like he had more on the table last year for Bojan Bogdanovic, which is obvious. I mean, he had an extra year of team control. So I think that the Pistons, for the situation that they had, they traded away basically 2 aging, expiring contracts for the most part. And they got a young asset who they can build with for the future that I think is going to help and fit their core.
Yeah, and Fournier is expiring, by the way. I think a lot of people, like the way people talk about it, it's like they don't realize that because, like, oh, it's this terrible contract. It's we don't got to worry about it.
It's terrible.
It's a team option.
It was terrible when it got signed.
100%. And, like, but for us, it doesn't really make
literally
a huge
not
difference.
at all.
He just won't be back next year. He shouldn't be back next year.
I don't think so.
But yeah, I think that sure, talent for talent, the Knicks got more talent out of the trade. That's fair. Like Bojan's better than Quentin Grimes right now, just in a vacuum. But it's not really the point, I don't think. Like that's not sort of the direction we're headed in right now. And so I think that you just kind of got to change the framing of it to a degree if you do feel like it was a disaster for the Pistons. You mentioned the Bojan point of we could have probably gotten more for him last year, and I'm sure that's true. Troy Weaver said as much. But he also said we felt like we still needed a veteran and like some veteranship and like a shooter on the team, and that's kind of true.
I think it's a good point.
like I'm not gonna say like maybe you should have traded him last year. I don't know. I don't know exactly what was on the table. I have an idea, but we would have had even less shooting than we had before if we didn't trade Bojan, and like this thing might have been even more of a disaster. So I'm not upset about it.
I don't think so either. And how great could have the return have been in the long run? You know?
I think like 2 later picks sort of was the idea.
And we'll talk about the Knicks side of things later on once we move on to the rest of the teams or whatever. But yeah, I mean the Knicks acquiring both of these guys without giving up any draft capital is very impressive on their end.
For sure.
And Ryan Arcidiacono gets cut. Maybe he'll just end up re-signing right back with the Knicks to keep the Nova boys happy. So moving on, I mean, we can quickly do this one. The other trade that the Pistons made yesterday, Daniel House Jr. in a second for a top 55 projected second-round pick in 2028, just to get it back with a second-round pick.
We got another pick to take on Daniel House's contract.
Yeah, and then waived him. So whatever. But the bigger one, the 2 bigger ones came on Wednesday. Starting off with a guy that I know you have been high on, and it's very cool that he is now in a Pistons jersey because I've heard you talk about him from time to time before he was a Piston. That's Simone Fontecchio from the Utah Jazz. We acquired him in exchange for Kevin Knox, the Washington Wizards second-round pick in this year's draft, and the draft rights to another guy that you were very informed on,
my boy.
Gabriel Procida,
Italian Terrence Ross.
from Italy. Italian for Italian here in this draft.
True.
And then
I thought that we were assembling them all. But
and then we cut Gallinari,
yeah.
so it's really all over the place with the Italian guys there. What can Pistons fans look for in Fontecchio?
I think it's very simple. Like he is a plus defender, I would say. One of the better defenders on the team. Immediately as a wing, and he fills a position of need. Like he's going to be able to guard guys that we generally aren't necessarily capable of guarding outside of Asar, but he is a legit shooter. Like he shoots off movement. You can, run him off pin downs, run him off flares. He can run dribble handoffs. He can screen. Like he did a lot of that in Utah. They use all their guys as screeners, and he's very capable of doing so. So you got like a good defender who's also not only like a knockdown shooter, but a guy who can shoot off movement, a guy who you can run sets for. So I think he's like a very capable role player. And he does, like, he's a pretty good decision maker, and he can put it on the floor a little bit too. So it's not like he's just that. He's not, Grant Williams or whatever. Don't get it twisted. He's very, I really think he is like a good offensive player that also is good at defense, and very simply, like, that's awesome to have as a role player. But he's not a dude who's going to maintain a ton of usage. He's not a guy that's going to take the ball out of anybody else's hands. So I think that he was a perfect trade target for us. I wouldn't have even expected him to get traded. Like, I wouldn't have expected him to be on the market, really. Yeah. So I was really excited about the trade. That pick is, like, relatively good. It's Washington's second, essentially.
It'll be a top 35.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it is good. Like, I get why the Jazz did it 100%. They got to make room. They had a lot of guys. And it's not like we gave up nothing. But I do think Fontecchio helps us a lot.
Yeah, and I think Danny Ainge just can't help himself when it comes
That's
to
part
picks,
of it,
especially
too.
with the other trade.
They had to make room for, like, Hendricks and Sensabaugh.
Yeah, exactly. And to play those rookies that haven't had much opportunity this year. But yeah, Fontecchio is, and it's kind of a similar thing with Grimes. Obviously, they're different players, but
for sure, they are definitely different.
We add player archetypes that this team didn't have. We had guys that could shoot. We had guys that could defend. We didn't really have guys that could do both, at least enough where you trust them to do so and play them in those big minutes. And I think that Grimes and Fontecchio both can do that. Fontecchio's shooting almost 40% from three this year on almost 5 attempts per game. And like you said, he shoots a lot of off-ball threes or like off movement, coming off of screens threes. I'm super excited for that. I'm interested to see how the rotation looks with him, like whether he gets a start or not. And whether he plays more of the 4 or the 3, but either way, like, I like this pickup, and it was an unexpected one, like you said. Like, that's just a guy that I think Troy Weaver, for everything he's done bad in the past, I respect what he did at this deadline, for also a fact of losing. But you kind of got to this earlier, but losing Bojan and Burks I think it just helps the young guys so much more. I mean,
yeah, I think it's hard to, like, understand if you don't watch much, and I don't blame anybody for not watching. Don't get me wrong,
for
but
sure.
Yeah, like, go ahead, but I do think you're right.
Bojan and, like, in a game like last night, for an example, Bojan and Burks are going to try to shoot their way back into that game. Like, with the Pistons down by 20-some points, they're going to try to be the ones that take over. And also, I mean, obvious statement here, those guys were really bad defensively this season. Horrific, terribly defensively. And if they weren't shooting the lights out, which they were a good amount of the time.
Definitely.
They were really hurting us negatively in a lot of these games when, as the veterans, you kind of hope that they aren't the ones doing that way. And not only are they hurting us on the scoreboard, they're hurting the development of our young guys, because we need to have Cade and Ivy and Sasser be the guys that try to get us out of this hole and bring us back into the game. So I think that just the departure of Bojan and Burks is a help in itself, if we're being completely honest, and just from a development standpoint. And then we add guys that hopefully can help those guys develop even more. So I love the Fontecchio and Grimes ads, assuming that those will be the only true impactful guys, at least past this season.
Yeah, I think Troy Brown might get some run too, just because, again, it's sort of a, like, wing that's depth, just kind of fill the gaps. I think, like, he can be one on this team. But speaking to what you mentioned, like, how it's more of a supporting cast now, I think, as opposed to being the main guys from time to time. Like, I talked about it a bit yesterday, but we got more sort of background characters, and that's not, like, disrespectful at all. But these are guys that are going to are supportive of the young players to a degree. Like, they're going to fill the gaps. They're going to be the glue. Where sometimes it felt like the young guys were becoming the glue between, like, Bojan and Cade.
That's a great.
For example,
I like that comparison.
And we talked a lot. Like, I think, like, a talking point throughout the season, like, especially when they were historically bad, going on the losing streak and everything. And I think I came on here, and anybody I talked to, it felt a lot of times there's more talent. Like, it's not historically bad talent. The team doesn't have historically bad talent, but it felt like together functionally it didn't work at all. Now it does. Like, now it works functionally, and that's more important to, in my opinion, at this point than anything, really. So now we have a functional roster that makes sense around the young core that we have, and that's a huge win for me, even if, maybe we didn't get all the value out of Bojan that we could have.
Yeah, I mean, everyone that was in, like, a national media standpoint that talked about the Pistons at some point this season kind of all said the same thing of, like, how are they this bad? Like, their roster's not bad. They're not necessarily watching the games, because why would you if you're a 76ers.
It got to a point
fan.
where it was like, you got to watch.
Yeah, that's true. During the losing streak, you were,
yeah.
and then you would watch and you'd be like, man, they're playing kind of good. Like,
and then the fourth quarter or whatever. Yeah.
So most people would say though, like, how are they this bad? Like the roster is pretty. They have good players on the team. The players just didn't. It didn't relate to wins. You know, the combination of those players was never going to succeed. And I'm not saying that this team is all of a sudden going to be crazy, but it's like the point you said. It helps the young guys become this top guys, and it can give them the opportunity to really try and lead this franchise like we always wanted to from the get-go. I mean, in Cade's time here, he has not really been the number one go-to guy, really like at 100% of the time, really ever. You know, when it was Jeremy Grant, it was like a duo kind of thing going on. I'm not saying him and Bojan was like a duo starship or anything, but a lot of the times Bojan would be the guy they go to at the end of games. You know, basically every game this season that was close, it's Bojan's time to try and ice the game. So I think that now this allows Cade to fully take over and be that guy, and allows Ivy, you know, and those other guys to get more opportunities.
Yeah, and I think, you know, giving those guys that opportunity, like we're sort of living and dying by what the young guys do as opposed to by what Bojan and Burks do. And that's really the most exciting part of the second half of the season to me. Like, I'm way more excited to watch the team now than I was a few weeks ago.
I totally am.
And it's not just because it's new faces. It's because it is, I feel, a different environment for those dudes. Like, and that excites me a lot. Will they drown? Will they swim? I guess we'll have to see. But I think that there's much more opportunity out there.
Yeah. And the last trade that they made was the first trade that they made on Wednesday. You kind of already talked about it a little bit, but Monte Morris was sent to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Troy Brown Jr., Shake Milton, and a 2030 second-round pick. If the Pistons want, both Troy Brown and Shake Milton can be gone after the season. They both have a team player option, or a team option, which is Troy Brown's is at $4 million, Shake's is at $5 million. So very flexible if you do want to keep them around. They've shown that maybe they can be a role on this team next year. Obviously, that's a cheap number to bring them back on. But either way, you got more expiring contracts, so we still have an expected $61 million in cap space for this offseason.
Yeah, totally. Like, keeping the cap flexibility this offseason, I think, was a big priority too, which is good. And I wouldn't have loved sort of throwing that out to maybe try and salvage the last
like Zach Levine.
Definitely like Zach Levine, but just in general, like if they would have, like I mentioned, I wrote about and talked about it last time I was here, like taking on Bertans or whatever. Like that would have made things a little bit worse this offseason. And so I don't mind that they didn't do that. Like, I think that it's exciting to have that to look forward to. I think that it's good that we'll be able to evaluate the next 30-some games and then figure out what do we need, like what will help Cade and Ivy and Duren progress and SR progress. Like, what do we need to put around them? We can figure that out. Is it a wing? Like, is that exactly what these guys need? Or do we want to move Cade more towards the wing and maybe try and get a guard, for example? Like, we'll be able to figure stuff out, I think, at a higher level than we have been. Like, this is the best evaluation period I think these dudes have had together. And, yeah, it's great. Shake Milton and Troy Brown. I mentioned Troy Brown. I think he might be in the rotation. I won't be surprised if Shake Milton is, too.
We still have a lot of, like, true guards.
We don't,
which we had like too many at one point.
I don't think we have like a real point guard on the bench, really.
Sasser really isn't like.
No, although he did have 11 assists last night, so maybe it just kind of ends up being
which
him.
I'd be cool with.
Yeah, totally. But just to give him the reps and stuff of that nature. But I think like of like Shake and Sasser and like Malachi Flynn, Shake is probably the most distributive one, I feel like, in my head. I guess maybe that opinion could change over the next 30 games, but none of those dudes are really looking to get everybody involved. I don't
think,
of the time.
Like, I honestly think there's maybe more of a chance that Fournier plays over them, just from a Monty Williams
yeah, I don't know.
Like,
you might be right.
I could see it, but yeah, I do agree though. Troy Brown definitely could play. We actually have like quote unquote depth at the wing now, like.
First time ever.
You know, like I don't want to. It's not like great
good depth.
But like we just have guys. We didn't have guys before.
Right.
We had Kevin Knox and Asar Thompson. So now we have a good group of guys that can play the wing spot. And I think I'm excited for Asar to like. I assume he's gonna start the rest of the season.
It's tough to say because like Stu is such. I don't know.
That's kind of that was kind of my next question for you. Is like. Fully healthy. Isaiah Stewart's got to be back within the next week, right? It was,
I think so.
It was 10 to 14 days. Like,
right.
I feel like a good amount of time ago.
I think you're probably right.
So if you had to predict Saturday, let's say Quentin Grimes is ready, Fontecchio is ready, Beef Stew is back. This is all hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
This could be a week from now as well.
Yeah.
What is the ideal starting lineup for the rest of the season for you? And then maybe what do you think it actually will be?
So if it were up to me, I'd go Cade, Ivy, Fontecchio, Asar, Duren.
I think most
primary
people
four,
would
and
get
then
would say
I'd go
that.
with Fontecchio. I think he's the best of the sort of depth guys for that lineup.
Offers a little more size than Q Grimes, just to fit with Asar in that.
Yeah, and
lineup.
he's a better shooter than Grimes is. So I think he's a bit better of a passer, I think, as well. So I don't know. I think he's just a little bit better of a glue guy right now. Maybe not quite as good defensively, but that's the lineup that I would roll out there.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's kind of what
they might
exactly
start.
What I was going to say,
but
I think Stu's gonna start, right?
At least for some time. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's started almost every game. I think he came off the bench one game this season, and it was one of his best games of the year, which is pretty hilarious. Mike Muscala and James Wiseman still remain like the backup fives.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that makes them put Isaiah Stewart back in the starting lineup because they're comfortable rocking with Mike Muscala, even though he's played in a lot of two big lineups. As we've seen, he's started at the 4 the last couple of games. So let's say that's a starting lineup, right? Of the 5 that you said, Cade, Ivy, Asar, Fontecchio, Duren. What do you think the bench group kind of looks like as far as who gets minutes? Is it just Sasser, Grimes,
Muscala will definitely play.
Stu and Muscala, and then maybe Troy Brown is the 10th guy?
Right. Yeah, I think that's how I would sort of divvy it up right now. But it's Grimes should get run with some of the starters. It shouldn't just be platoon swaps. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
I'm
definitely
sure it won't
not.
be, but all the time. But I'm sure that you'll see the all bench lineup every once in a while.
He does
Shout
like
out
it
to
still.
Monty Williams.
Hey, it's when you only have 8 guys available to play, you can't run the all bench lineup.
That's true.
That's one
true.
thing
That
that is
might
a
be why we won.
positive that you
might
see
be
from the
why we
last
won.
couple of games. Stanley Amude, maybe he'll get in that rotation after the game
I
he had last
imagine
night.
they'll pick him up. So convert him to a real contract.
Been a good
He's
shooter
earned it.
this season.
Yeah, he's earned it.
True or false? The Pistons will finish outside of a bottom 3 NBA team this season. For context, the Pistons have 8 wins. The Washington Wizards have 9 wins. The Spurs and Hornets have 10 wins. So the bottom of the league is really rough right now.
It is. I think. Okay, so I'll say I think that we'll catch Washington. We'll pass up Washington. We shouldn't be terrible, right? We shouldn't be terrible anymore. We'll still be bad, but we shouldn't be terrible anymore. I think we'll catch Washington and we'll catch Charlotte. It will be close to San Antonio. It's tough. I mean, I do think now that Wemby's starting and just playing the 5, they do just seem better than us. But is he going to play the entire season? Is he going to play the last 10, 15 games? Maybe. I guess it's hard to say. It doesn't seem like he won't based on what they've done up to this point. They play him on back-to-backs and everything now. So I think we'll catch Washington and we'll catch Charlotte. Everything else, I don't feel confident.
And I feel like we have a better roster right now than those other 3 teams, right?
San Antonio and
Charlotte and Washington.
The thing is, San Antonio can defend, because they have Wemby. Their defense is pretty good.
You're
when
right.
He's in the game.
That's true. That's a good point.
We don't have that.
But now they got Marcus
We
Morris.
We should mention, though, defensively, Grimes and Fontecchio are huge upgrades.
Yeah,
you mentioned it.
And Weaver
minute,
was talking about that in his post
deal.
game or in the post deadline presser. At the beginning of the year, the focus was defense. It kind of was we were kind of solid at defense to start the year, but our offense was so bad that we had to focus on offense. And their offense has been good,
better. I think the last
better, yes.
I want to say maybe week, 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. It's top.
Yeah, I wrote this down. Since January 14th, which was when they made the Mike Muscala trade, they are 8th in scoring in the NBA, and they have a 119 offensive rating, which is up
awesome.
from a 109 offensive rating that they had.
Huge. That's huge. I mean, they're making more threes. They're shooting more threes. Makes sense.
But now they add some more
continue.
defense to the table.
Yeah, without losing a ton. I mean, I guess they do lose some shooting. Those guys aren't going to shoot as much as
And Bojan is a 20 points per game scorer.
For 100%. Yeah. So maybe you see a little bit dip offensively if Cade and you're more relying on the young guys, so might be a little bit more up and down, but defensively, it should make things easier on Duren. My thing is, it should make things easier on everybody because Fontecchio is a pretty good helper as a wing. He's it's not just that teams could attack Bojan and Burks on the ball. It's not just that they couldn't keep dudes in front. It's the fact that they didn't do anything off the ball either. So when Fontecchio's your low man as opposed to Bojan, Fontecchio's not anything crazy. Don't get me wrong. He's solid. He's above average. He's cromulent, I would say, but he's not. He's not Jaden McDaniels or something. He's not going to completely change everything. But that's a big difference. That's a big upgrade from those guys.
For sure,
just give more of a shit. Just give more of a shit, and it'll look a lot better, I think, for everybody. Like, guys are going to be helped. Asar's not just doing everything to a degree, and, like, Duren maybe doesn't have, like, there's less for Duren to try and clean up. Duren might still look rough defensively because it has looked really rough, I think, and this doesn't change all of it, but hopefully that helps, like,
it makes things easier.
Yeah, exactly. It gives him a little bit of a role that makes more sense, or, like, one that's more comparable to other teams, and just overall, it's a more comparable environment to the one that these young guys will probably be playing in when they're competitive.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially to the Duren point, because it hasn't been the best defensive season for Duren. I think that the first couple games of the season hinted at us like, oh my God, he might be the defensive anchor of the future for us, and it's been anything but that. But he shows flashes sometimes, and I think like even like sometimes in games, like I feel like last night he has a couple. He has moments where it's like, he could have some defensive ability, and he finishes possessions obviously with his great rebounding ability. So we'll see. I like the moves all around that the Pistons made. I'm gonna give them from a standpoint of what the roster was 2 days ago to what it is now. I'm substantially more happy.
Same. I
don't know what grade that would be.
I'll go B.
Like a B minus.
Strong,
I was gonna say.
I'd say strong B.
Because also, like, they didn't get they traded away the best players in every trade.
Yeah.
So, obviously
not the Fontecchio trade. I guess.
No, you're right. You're right. They did get the best player in that trade. But obviously, like the Bojan trade and even the Monte Morris trade, like, I mean, that one's not that big of a deal. But usually the team that gets the best player wins the trade most. of the time.
But this isn't that, like, we're not a competitive
we're trying
team
to,
right now.
Exactly. So I think
that point's kind of
the moves made
for
sense,
us.
and I'm happy what Troy Weaver did, because they promised that a lot of moves were going to be made and change was going to be made.
And it happened.
It happened. That was something that I didn't necessarily expect.
Maybe Monty will tap in now. He just has to lock in.
Yeah, well, I saw again, like, because James Edwards literally tweeted like 40 different Troy Weaver quotes.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And I tried reading through like almost all of them.
I read a lot of them. I don't know if I saw all of them.
One of them was like, he basically was like, yeah, Monty still has to like learn how our players are and stuff. And I'm just like, dude,
sure, dude.
We are 50 games into the season. Like, he should know our players. Yeah. He's like, he's still learning like who's good at what and everything. I'm like, what?
Yeah, totally. Like, yeah. No, I mean, he's been a disaster. But like, that's another, like, I thought it was a pretty good trade deadline for Troy personally. Not everybody agrees with that, but like, I don't know, he's drafted well.
Yeah.
The problem with Troy was always the moves on the margins. Well, these were all moves on the margins that we all kind of like a little bit.
Yeah,
so
for now.
Not we all kind of like, but I like. So
he admitted he got the Marvin Bagley thing wrong today.
He did,
too.
yeah, and it sort of hinted at, we're not getting Wiseman back. Like, we're not bringing him back.
That's a really good point.
So I like now the marginal moves look better. Like, he's making better ones. I feel like at least the process feels a little bit better. So I don't know. I'm not like, I really don't think he's like a disaster of a GM.
No, and
a lot of people.
I mentioned this last week, and I am on the side of like this season is much more on Monty Williams than it is on Troy Weaver.
Agree.
And
wholeheartedly
we
agree.
both kind of talked about that last week.
He didn't want Monty.
Exactly.
So, like, I don't know. Like,
he's probably playing like a little bit of Tom Gores.
I absolutely think he is. How could you not?
And it sucks that is happening in a professional environment
100%.
At this scale. It shouldn't be.
100%.
But it is what's probably happening.
How could you? Like, how can they'll be like, how much pressure? He's like, you want to fire me? I told you not to do this. Like, this wasn't me. There's been a couple times like he's gotten unlucky. He wanted to draft Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves said no.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's unlucky. He wanted to draft Desmond Bain. They took it over him. Drafted Sadiq. Like, I don't know. He's gotten kind of unlucky, low key.
I don't want to like back him up here.
The contracts haven't been great. Like, giving Bagley a contract is ridiculous and indicative of bad process.
And like I love the cap space like idea.
Right now, we got to use it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it just kind of he keeps like every offseason. It's like
kick the can down the road a little bit.
They keep pushing it back and back. But also, I think that the casual Pistons fan, who once again, I'm not saying if you're not watching every game, you are a bad fan because they're the worst team in the NBA. I get it. Yeah. But a lot of people they're immediately like Troy Weaver. What is he building with this team? They suck. It's like he's drafted good players, man. Like,
that's what I like. That's kind of like the biggest. That's the most important part of rebuilding is drafting the right guys.
Yeah,
and he's mostly done that. Like, Killian was a bad miss. Everybody missed in that draft for what it's worth. That was a horrific draft looking back on it. COVID year, et cetera, et cetera. He had James Wiseman number 1 in that class, so that would have went badly too if he happened to have that pick. But outside of that, like, it hasn't been a disaster. Like, Sadiq's like a fringe rotational player, I guess. But getting that late is like, it's like whatever.
Beef
Stu was
getting
like,
him at pick 15, I think, or 14, something like that.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Not bad. Like, he's a rotational level player. Sasser looks like a pretty good pick. Can't be mad at the Ivy pick right now based on what he's doing. Can't be mad at the Duran pick.
Asar.
Cade was the pick. Asar seems like a pretty, like, I don't know. I think that there's less to complain about than we make out to be. Not that there's nothing to complain about or that he's been great, but I'm saying he hasn't been like the worst GM in the league. In my opinion.
That's what I agree to, and I think a lot of people saw what we did yesterday, and their first immediate reaction is, "What is Troy Weaver doing? He's trying to save his job." Blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I think he made like the right moves for this franchise. So
I see the vision at the very least.
Now we are in a weird spot where like I want to start winning games. You know, I saw Kenny tweeted yesterday that the Pistons are going to get to 25 wins by the end of the year, which I think he was joking. Like,
I saw him tweet that.
He was overreacting.
I appreciate it though.
Yeah.
Shout out.
We would have to go what?
He was going through it.
Yeah, dude, that video he posted.
We could be them. Like I'd rather be the Pistons.
I was gonna bring this up to you. I'm happy that you saw that because it totally left my brain. I watched Kenny's video of him ranting on the Bulls.
Oh, I didn't watch it, but I wanted to.
Dude,
I'm gonna watch it.
He said the F word on YouTube. He doesn't
do that.
He don't be doing that.
He doesn't do that.
So he was definitely like he was pissed, and I was just thinking about that. I was like, I got to bring this up on the pod with Matt. Like, the Pistons are the worst team in the NBA, and a lot of Pistons fans say this is the worst. Like, I hate the Pistons. Blah blah blah. There are probably at least 3 other teams in the NBA right now that I can say I am so much happier in the position we are than that team. And the Bulls is easily the first one.
1,000%. Dude. Yeah, that's the worst team to be a fan of. I don't know if I could even do it.
Another season with no trade.
They haven't traded a player since like 2021.
It's like the Vooch trade, right?
I
or
think
it's like the
right.
DeMar signed a trade or whatever.
Like, if you made that trade, you'd be like, I can't do it again. I'd be terrified of trading.
But you can't even make like a little trade.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Like,
no, they haven't even shuffled anything.
Yeah, they picked up Pat Bev in the buyout market last year.
Yeah,
like,
that's right. I forgot about that.
They might do something again in the buyout this year. Yeah, I mean, that is just not trading. I get, Levine is probably a hard guy to trade right now. With
100. Yeah, they're in a tough spot.
But like DeMar, you couldn't even dump him.
But like
just to let Kobe White be the guy.
Like I would
maybe
DeMar.
lose more games and just try to have a better pick. Like. Not trading Caruso, like Caruso's a great player. What's he doing on the Bulls?
Playoff push part 3, baby.
I don't know. I would so much rather be the Pistons than the Bulls. Is basically what I'm getting at.
Definitely. They're just sitting on their hands, literally, like just no vision to the future, nothing. It's like Kobe White's gonna be really good. It looks like, and that's.
Would you rather be the Pistons or the Warriors?
I mean, the
not
Warriors
based
have
on
won.
Past, no, just right now.
But like, you can live with it because the Warriors won.
You're right.
Like,
I guess I can't take that out. And you also still have Steph Curry.
You have Steph and you have Kuminga and Pajemski. Like, there's some stuff there. And
it's definitely still the Warriors.
I low-key think that they. How far back are they right now? Do you know?
I have the standings pulled up here, so let me check.
I think they're gonna get in the play-in.
I think they are a play-in team right now. I'm pretty sure. Okay, no, they're the 11 seed. They are.
All right,
they're tied with the Jazz for the 10 seed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they're definitely going to make the play. I think they might make noise. Draymond looks really good.
Yeah, they definitely could.
Their last 10 games.
I just
Kuminga looks good.
Last week I asked you, which this is not really Warriors related. It kind of is. I said, what's more likely, LeBron to get traded or the Lakers to make 0 trades?
Oh yeah.
And we both said LeBron to get traded just because there's no way the Lakers. There's no way the Lakers make no trades.
That's hilarious.
And if you would have told me that, I'm not counting Corey Joe for a second, and then Corey Joe gets cut right away. That's not a trade.
It's a luxury tax.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fake trade. Yeah. If you would have said the Lakers and Warriors are both not making a single trade,
crazy.
I would have actually been shocked.
Crazy.
And it happened.
It did.
Which is unreal.
That is unreal.
But anyways, what I was trying to get at with the Pistons winning thing is we still kind of want to have a good pick, I
feel we aren't done. A top 5 pick would be awesome.
It still would be awesome, and there's just a world where we hey, we start playing good, and all of a sudden we're 4th odds team now, and we're gonna fall into 6 or something. Yeah. Which this we talked about this draft, it's really I listened to Keith Smith's podcast, and he basically said that he was talking to 2 NBA scouts in NBA front offices, and he asked for their top 5 player rankings or whatever.
Yeah.
And each guy had 5 completely different guys. He said the guy that was number 1 on one list was number 5 on the other guy's list, and then other than that, it was 5 completely different guys.
That's hard to believe for me.
He might have just been saying that just to say that.
Yeah.
But
no way somebody didn't have SAR in their top 5. I don't know. That's kind of crazy.
No, you're
right.
I
mean, if they're NBA scouts, then that's really what they said.
But it's just weird to think about.
It is weird. Yeah, I mean, it's a bad draft. That's definitely true. But there's like NBA level wings that like they just probably won't be franchise players, but like
and that's
there's good players in
when
every
people
draft.
say yeah, exactly. When people say it's a bad draft, it's like just we're only saying that because Luka's not in this draft.
Yeah, right.
You know,
exactly. Like there's not a number one. There's not a number one pick.
Even the 2020 draft, which is we just talked about, is a bad draft. It has LaMelo, it has Ant, it had Desmond Bane later, it had Tyrese Halliburton in the late lottery. Like there's good players in drafts.
Totally.
You just have to find them.
Yeah, you have to find them. I think like it'll be easy for them to find like, all right, this is like a supportive piece that makes sense next to our guys. I think it gets tough if they get like this is the scenario that I've talked through with a couple people like 100 times.
Yeah,
it's
I
just
know
like
what you're gonna say.
If they get number one and Sarr's the clear number one guy, what do they do?
Which I think he is.
That's what I think he is too. But I don't feel confident. Like I haven't done any work on it.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah.
But right now that's
what do you
where
do?
I'm at.
Because Duren has, like, if he continues to flash like this the whole rest of the season.
But what if his defense just sucks?
I think a month ago it would have been easy to be like, you know what, I think we just might have to move on from Duren or whatever. Or maybe try to play them for a year together, see how it looks.
No, that's
now,
all fair.
Like, I don't know.
I don't know either. I think if the next 30 games, like you don't see like if you're like, all right, Duren's never going to be like one of the better defensive.
Yeah,
like a
Sarr could be
anchor,
like the anchor. Yeah,
Sarr could be Sarr could be the best
because he plays. I've seen
easily.
Obviously just like you said. I haven't done much research, but even just the clips you see, even on the perimeter, like he locks.
He's like he's not quite there, but like it's Evan Mobley-esque. Like it's a jumper that's developing. Like he's really long, but he's just unbelievably fluid. I watched him last year because he was in OTE.
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit!
Yeah,
look
because
at this
I
guy
thought he
move.
was going to be in OT again this year. I didn't know that he was going to. He's in the NBL, right?
Yeah, Perth Wildcats.
Yeah. Because I was going to tune into the OT this year, and I realized he wasn't in it. So that's unfortunate. Yeah. But okay, the last thing before we talk about the Pistons game last night and the one against the Kings. Sad news in Detroit that came yesterday, along with all the trades. It was a fun day. It was an eventful day. But the saddest news, maybe that we've seen in some time, Killian Hayes waived by the Detroit Pistons after they had 19 guys at one point. You probably figure they're not going to do a 5-for-1 trade with a team with a bunch of scrubs. So they got to cut 4 guys. Killian Hayes ends up being one of them. If you are the first time you've ever seen Matt on this podcast, Matt is probably the only bigger Killian Hayes fan than I am from just on this podcast standpoint. And it's by a lot. So Matt, what are your parting words with the French legend, Pistons legend, Killian Hayes?
My parting words. I'll say, obviously it didn't work out. And it was time. I think that there's no denying that it was time. And do I believe that he can still be an NBA rotational player? Yes. Does he need a shooting coach that we don't have? Yes. But he's a good defender, good passer, smart basketball player, does a lot of like the marginal things really well. That's stuff that I care about more, I think, than other people, and that's probably where the infatuation began to a degree. And then also it's just like, all right, you just like having players to root for to some extent. And he was definitely one of them for me. And, it was the guy like I wanted to draft and everything like that. KOC draft guide had me going crazy.
Yeah, that's true. KOC's probably the second biggest Killian Hayes
I was
fan.
like, what year was that? 2020. So I was like, I don't know. I wasn't as into it. Like I wasn't forming my own opinions the way that I am now about the draft. And so like I relied a lot on his draft guide. And so I was like, oh my God, like this guy
fits everything.
Manu Ginobili? No, but and I think I would have loved Killian as a prospect looking back at it now anyway.
Yeah.
Regardless of the draft.
Especially in that
guide.
specific draft,
He wasn't supposed to not be able to shoot at all. Like that's is part of like a Pistons thing, I think, like a Pistons development thing. Makes me a little worried for Sarr. But also like he got injured really quick. The hip zapped away some of his quickness, his athleticism in general, I think. So that was all part of it. But I will, like, wherever he goes, like, I'm going to root for him. Definitely going to continue to follow his career without a doubt. I do appreciate that he does get, like, he leaves me a lot of good memories. Like, last year the team was terrible, and I was just tuning in to see what he was going to do all the time.
Honestly, same.
Like, I was like, all right, Killian's starting tonight, though, so I got to watch. Like, that's how it always was, and that's how it's going to be for the next team that he's on, probably. You just have players that you love, you know. I understand that he's not a part of the plans anymore.
A lot of flashes though. That really,
There were
like you said, there's a lot of good memories. The Dallas
There were
game.
good memories. People like to act like there aren't, but if you were looking at it from a positive perspective, there are good memories.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously the fight with Mo Wagner.
I was at the game.
Really, you were?
Yeah, I got a lot of retweets that night on Twitter because I was firing stuff off.
That's awesome. I mean, that was a super fun time. Like I said, the Dallas game, like where he hit back-to-back dagger threes.
Yep.
To beat them. He had a big game against OKC. I remember. I think
Yeah,
that was his
that was
career
2
high at
years
the time.
ago, I think, yeah.
It was. That ankle breaking like step back three against Brooklyn. Like,
I think his foot was on line.
I think it was.
But yeah, you're
like
right.
a lot of great memories.
He had like the breakout game last year. That sounds ridiculous to say now, but like the game that started like that little run he had last year was against Boston, and I was going nuts in my dorm, dude.
I think I remember.
He had a little in and out pull up against Jason Tatum, and I was like tweeting at Jason Tatum,
I remember
like,
that
step
play.
up, bozo, or some shit, and like he had an and one through Derek White, and I was like, oh my, like what is going on right now? So I do appreciate that stuff, and like I was always optimistic about it, so he always kind of gave me that path of optimism, I guess. So that was cool. But
he'll get picked up.
I think he'll get picked up too.
I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Like people joke that he's the worst player in the NBA. Genuinely, like the fact that he's good on at least one end of the ball, I think makes that untrue.
Yeah.
So I do think
he's not even a
get
bottom
picked up.
3 player on this Pistons team. I mean,
I would agree with that.
You know,
and
like
now we don't have a point guard. Now we don't have a point
That's
guard.
what I was
like no troll shit at
I thought
all.
about that,
we
like,
could use him probably.
Like if we were gonna cut Gallo, like why would we not?
I think it was a little bit of like a favor. Like, all right, you need a new space.
Because he did. You're right. He did request like I want to be on a new team, and then they couldn't trade him. So Which I saw that like the Grizzlies asked for him for a second, and then like we said no. I don't know if that was, and obviously it was true or not, but
I think it seems like it was a like heavily protected second that wasn't really anything.
Yeah.
So they were like,
give
us a real second.
One. Yeah, that's fair.
And it just didn't happen.
Okay, so before we talk about the rest of the trades, we do got to talk about the Pistons games, the last 2 games, because it has been 2 extremely exciting West Coast late night games on the road. I have a confession to make to you, Matt.
Okay.
Last night, watching the game, laying in my bed, it wasn't going great for the longest time.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Okay. And
you're not alone.
Anthony Simons comes down the court, hits a 3. Pistons come down, miss. Anthony Simons comes down again, just pulls up right in, I can't remember, Jaden Ivey's face probably. Splashes another 3 to make it 89-69. I press the off button on my TV remote and I fall asleep because it was like 11:45 at night, and I was like, I kind of have to get up early. Like, I'm going to bed.
You are not the only person I've heard that. I watched, so I was up for the whole thing, but fourth quarter was like a 15-point game, I want to say, and Lakers Nuggets was going on, and that was close. I was like, all right, I'm gonna just turn on Lakers Nuggets. So I watched the end of Lakers Nuggets, which was also a very good game.
Yeah, but that pass from Jokic where
that was wild. I don't know how he did that.
That's crazy.
But that game ended with like 2 minutes left in the Pistons game. So I was like, oh, we're coming back. Like it's close. So then I turned on the Pistons game, got to watch the rest of that. But I didn't see a big like meat of the comeback itself. But I saw the last couple minutes of the fourth and OT. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean it was sick seeing like the young guys sort of come together and winning a game
and just kind of overcome like this weird like dark cloud that it felt like was over this team. Like they were
the vibes opened up yesterday a little bit.
And it was just like that whole first half they just all were playing so sluggish, and it just felt like they were all moving so slow and weren't really caring. And I love that Jalen Duren in the postgame said that Cade got into everybody and was like, we need to what are we doing out here basically, and they were able to turn it around. Jeremy Grant almost has a 50 bomb against a former team. Doesn't matter, and they win. Yeah, when I woke up, and the first thing that I saw was Jeremy Grant scores career high 49. It didn't say like the score or anything. It was just like I saw that, and I was like, oh my God, dude, like that's crazy. And then I see Pistons win despite Jeremy Grant's 49. I was like, I need to watch so I watched like the highlights. I tried to watch as much like defensive stuff as I could.
Yeah.
Asar was phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball in that fourth quarter run.
He had help too. Like he had help. It felt like it wasn't always one. Like they sent some doubles, they helped him out. Jalen Duren was legit protecting the rim. Like it wasn't as much just like Asar carrying the defense to an extent.
Duren had a couple monster putback dunks, which are just some 2K animation ass contact dunks, which were really cool. Marcus Sasser stepped up late with a couple clutch threes, that steal to almost win the game. That would have been really cool. And Jaden Ivey, most importantly, has just been on fire. these last 2 games. 7 of 7 from 3 last night. In this 12-game stretch since trading for Mike Muscala, he's averaging 21 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, shooting 53% from 3. Just in the last 7 games, he's shooting 61.5% from 3, which obviously 7 for 7 is going to inflate that number.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, regardless, like, I think he's up near 40% on the season
I'm
now.
pretty sure he is. I can double check.
Is it 40.2 now, maybe?
I think it's right under, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. It was 37, I think, heading into last night.
And that's going to inflate it quite a bit.
Yeah.
He is at 37.5%.
Oh, so maybe it was. So maybe I saw 37 after the game and I got confused.
Must
Whatever.
have been.
Anyway.
Still, though, I mean, sitting at almost 38% from 3,
yeah.
where he was at 35 or something, like before this stretch really started.
Yeah.
We'll definitely take that.
I think he was at 32.
Probably, yeah.
But I think that it's the biggest subplot of the Pistons season at this point is the step that it feels like Jaden Ivey has taken over the last however long. And it's not just that he's shooting. Like, obviously that's really important and he's scoring efficiently and that's great. But he turned into the best guard offensive rebounder in the league.
Literally, dude.
I think he's leading
so
guard.
many second possessions.
Yeah, I think he's leading guards in offensive rebounds since I don't know exactly the date, but not an insignificant amount of time.
Yeah.
He is fighting defensively. He's making all of the little winning plays. He's diving on the ground. Like, it feels like he's turned into he's just added a new layer that we never even thought that he could have, or at least I never really thought that he could have, or I never saw it coming. And it's been so much fun to watch. He's been the biggest positive of the last couple weeks, I think, pretty clearly. And yeah, I'm really excited for Jaden Ivey. I think that obviously, guys are going to get hot and cold, but I think that this is more than just a hot streak for Jaden Ivey. I feel like it feels like he's at a different level right now of a player than he was before.
It really, and a lot of the times earlier in this season, Monty Williams at least kind of made it seem like Jaden Ivey doesn't care that much. That was always the thing. Which, looking back at it, when Jaden Ivey was coming off the bench getting 20 minutes per game. That's really weird to think that happened during this season or whatever. But yeah, he made it seem like Jaden Ivey had a motor issue, or a attitude issue. And I just feel like that has been completely flipped as far as his effort that he shows on those offensive rebounds. Mm-hmm. He obviously is not this great defender or anything, but I think he tries a lot harder than he maybe did at the beginning of the season or last year or whatever. And yeah, I mean, the offensive rebounding thing is something that it really sticks out almost every game. I mean, he has multiple old rebounds in key moments too, late in games, and it's just been he closes out that game against Sacramento the other night, hitting a couple dagger threes. They're letting him shoot. He has the confidence to keep hitting them, and then last night steps up again as well, obviously knocking down 7 of 7 threes. It's been so fun to watch him over this stretch.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I think that don't be surprised if he becomes sort of a guy that people prop up as, he's way more valuable than you expect because of the offensive rebound thing. Here's my take. I think that it feels like the next analytics, I don't want to say full movement because it's not the same as figuring out that threes matter or whatever, but I feel like analytics people are starting to be like, hey, people really undervalue offensive rebounding. People don't realize how important it is to have 3-4 extra possessions every game, for example, that one player can provide. Right. And I think that there's going to be a point in time where it's Jaden Ivey does all this stuff on offense and he gets to the rim whenever he wants and he can shoot and, he tries really hard on defense and he creates 2 extra possessions every game. That stuff is invaluable. He's actually, just as good as the best player on the field, just as good as Kate or whatever. That might be a take, I think, 5 years from now. Calling it now. We're going to come back to
I like
this.
that. I'll clip that.
I think that it's important to, I've had a lot of conversations where it's it's tough to see Asar and Duren playing together because they can't shoot. Neither of them can shoot, and it's hard to project either one of them to be able to shoot.
Yeah.
Because of how bad Asar is. I thought Asar would, before, pre-draft when I was doing all the work and stuff, I was like, Asar will probably be able to be, a mediocre shooter in the NBA, but not a non-shooter. Yeah. That's how I felt. He shot, 30% at OT, which is with an NBA line, and I was like, that's not terrible for a prospect at all.
Right.
I can live with that. He had stretches.
Especially when that's his worst facet of his game.
Right, and he had stretches of being better. I think in the OT playoffs, he shot 40%, and it wasn't on an insignificant amount of attempts, and he was shooting some pull-ups and stuff, so it wasn't all catch-and-shoot corner threes. So I was like, I could kind of buy into this guy as a shooter. Hasn't really translated at all. That just feels like a miss to me at this point. I just read that wrong, I guess. Whatever. But if we have a Sar, Dern, and Ivy on the floor, we're going to get a ton of offensive rebounds. That's
yeah, exactly.
Like, I love
and
that.
And if Ivy
you know?
continues to shoot at this clip, it makes it a lot easier.
That makes it better. And I think that kind of gets lost in things is the fact that if those three guys are getting you 9 offensive rebounds every game, like that, then you probably live with
9
some
extra
of
shots that maybe someone makes.
I feel much better living with a little bit of the limitations. The thing is, you might not be able to rely on that like late in games and stuff, and that's kind of where it sort of becomes harder to gauge.
That's true.
Or harder to believe in. But yeah, I'm really excited about what these guys have been doing, and I guess I say all that to say the Ivy offensive rebounding thing is a big deal to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that it's been something that has really progressed the most in his game this year because I don't vividly obviously the stats might say differently, but I don't really remember him being a threat on the offensive glass really at all last season. So, and he's averaging less rebounds per game this year than he was last year, which is.
But he's getting one like
they're all
so
offensive
Cade,
basically.
Right?
Yeah, Cade's averaging less, but also Duren is just
but Duren and Nassar gobble rebounds.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's without Beef Stew. Like once we get Beef Stew back, who knows? I am excited to see what happens with the lineup when Beef Stew returns because he is having still a really good season. I think a lot of fans are forgetting about like Beef Stew a little bit just because he has missed quite a good amount of time in the last couple of like month or so. But yeah, I think that's good for Pistons talk. Is there anything else Pistons related that you want to speak on? Are we good to move on?
No, not really. I'm excited. I got to start getting into draft stuff. I think I was talking to my guy Ro about it yesterday. It's some fun prospects probably.
I don't think silver rewards the Pistons.
No, not with number one.
I don't think so.
I'll live with that. I gotta watch some Cody Williams.
Yeah,
I gotta watch some more Matas because I think of all like the way that the guys' archetypes are described, and again I haven't even watched all of them at all, but I watched like one G League Ignite game and like whatever clips
that you
I've seen
can't
on Twitter
watch
or whatever.
G League Ignite, dude. They're so bad.
They are so bad. That's the thing. It's like. Yeah, all of their percentages look bad because like they're just all, like they're all developing. They're all developing. Like it's very weird.
When Jalen Green and them were in the G League Ignite the first year, it was a bunch of like older vets with them. Like Jarrett Jack was on the G League Ignite team.
They still have that.
Okay,
but it's like they have 5. Like their whole starting lineup is the development guys. It's like that doesn't work really. Like Norris Cole's on the G League Ignite.
Okay,
I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that.
So, but yeah, like it is weird. So it's hard to like gauge how good of a shooter is. And I only bring that up. I was talking to my guy Ro, shout out to him, Pick and Roll on Twitter. Like I was asking him about Matas because he's way more into the draft than me. Like he knows all about these guys' high school profiles and stuff. Yeah. So I was like, so Matas, I asked him, is Matas a point forward? Because to me, I think this team could really use a point forward if we want to utilize Cade off ball more.
For sure, yeah.
And Matas is 6'10" and he's not long. I think he's got a neutral wingspan, so he has pretty short arms. But he's 6'10", he's scrawnier, yeah. And I was like, so he's kind of like a point forward, and he's like, yeah, like that's what he's billed as a point forward. It's not like he's some crazy passer, but he can do like the basic stuff. And I asked him about his shooting, and he was like, well, the shooting in the G League Ignite is bad, but he was like over 40% in high school. Like he was a good shooter in high school, so it's kind of hard. It's a little bit harder to tell, and some of the indicators are pretty good.
Because we kind of fell for that with Asar Thompson.
Yeah, I think so too. So I don't know, like that stuff. I get excited about getting into that stuff because I think like the dialogue around the draft is pretty fun and talking to people about different prospects is really
and it's
fun.
Something that the offseason has kind of been the main thing that Pistons fans have been able to look forward to the last couple of years. Matas' teammate Ron Holland, I saw, has been doing pretty well over their last. He's a fun
prospect.
He is.
Are you familiar with like his background at all?
Not necessarily.
So like in high school, he was like. This is the first time.
I know he like committed to Texas or whatever, and then like decommitted, and then went to G League. But
yeah, so this is like his first time as like a primary guy.
Okay.
So like he was like, I don't know if this is completely right, but from what I understand, he's basically like a center in high school, and like he was like the guy who did all the dirty work and was like really good at it.
But
so now he's just like a point guard. So it's kind of like he kind of has that to rely on, but also you think he might be like a point guard that can initiate things and get to the rim.
Another guy that kind of his shot is like the question, like his 3-point ability is like the question mark or whatever, which we probably shouldn't be drafting another guy like that.
It's hard. But like for everybody, it's like to some degree, it's like what level of shooter is he? Like,
yeah, that's true. There isn't that many guys that come out of the draft and they're like, we know he's going to be a good shooter.
Reese Sachet this year.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Reed Shepard from Kentucky. Where like, what else does he bring to the table? Yeah, exactly. So, okay, let's move on to the rest of the trades that happened across the NBA. From a Pistons standpoint, this trade deadline was crazy. It was a lot going on. It was chaotic, and it was really fun from a content standpoint just to like every 20 minutes I'm like, holy crap, this trade happened and this one. We got to think about this. from the rest of the NBA, though, definitely one of the more like low-key trade deadlines of the last whatever amount of years. Which there was no really big, like Bojan Bogdanovic, probably the best player traded. Buddy Hield, Gordon Hayward. Like I'm just trying to, there wasn't.
Yeah,
many,
right at the trade deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, like there wasn't any All-Star caliber players traded or anything. No,
but those kind of happened before. Like
you're right.
Harden.
Yeah.
Pascal, OG.
You're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
It just happened earlier.
That I guess I didn't really think about that. So, but yeah, like it wasn't a lot of big names that we thought might be traded weren't. DeJounte Murray wasn't moved. Even like a Malcolm Brogdon, who we kind of I thought for sure at least he would be moved, was not. But there was still some good trades. Do you think that the Bojan Burks trade was like the biggest trade of the day?
Yeah, I think so. Off the top of my head,
like most impactful trade, probably.
Unless I'm missing something, I do. Yeah, I would say so.
I would say so
because it was a contender adding to like legit rotational.
Yeah.
Well, at least Bojan. I guess I'm curious to see how much Burks plays, but I think he'll play.
Burks will play a lot immediately with the injury to OG Anunoby and Randall obviously still out.
But their playoff rotation, I'm curious to see how Burks factors.
I'm really interested to see what their starting lineup even looks like come a month from now. Their depth is crazy, and like DiVincenzo's been so hot.
He's been ridiculous.
That like you have to keep starting him, right?
Yeah.
So does Bojan end up coming off the bench by the end of the year? Like once OG and Randall are back.
Well, because you can't start him next to OG and Randall, probably.
Probably
just
not.
Because I don't know. I guess
you're right. But then you have like so many defenders on the bench that are just
I think you start.
I
don't think you start him with them.
I don't think so either. But even like right now, even with Randall and OG out, you still can form out lineups of Brunson, DiVincenzo, Bogdanovic. I guess Alec Burks is in there with Hartenstein, and then you're going to have Randall, OG back. Mitchell Robinson is probably going to come back at some point. They made it sound like he was going to. You still have Deuce McBride off the bench. You have Josh. I guess I didn't mention Josh Hart. He probably starts right now.
Triple-double yesterday.
I did see that. So definitely this is probably the deepest team in the NBA. I would say so. Like
absolutely.
And you don't see many teams taking this route of like we don't have like a super duper star. We have a superstar. I would say Brunson is in that range.
He's been playing like one.
Yes. But we don't have a super duper star. We're just going to get so many pretty good players and try to win. And that hasn't worked since like probably the Pistons win.
I was
going to
say they're trying to be the Pistons.
But it could work. And I respect them taking that route. And also they have so much flexibility now going into the offseason if this doesn't work out, because even if it does work out,
the next star that's traded, like
they go to the Knicks if it makes sense from a team fit standpoint, because they didn't trade any picks in the OG trade, in the Bojan Bogdanovic trade. Like they still have all their draft capital, which is a lot. Bojan Bogdanovic super tradable, and if they just want to use him in a trade, they can pick up that team option.
Yep, exactly.
There's $20 million to throw into a trade with Josh Hart's contract at like $15 to $18 million. I'm pretty sure somewhere in there. Boom, those two hella picks. You have yourself a star player in New York.
They very well might, but I mean, like Brunson's really good, man.
Yeah, you might not even have to. Yeah,
right, exactly. I'm excited to see what they do in the playoffs. Like they are. I think that they've moved themselves to the Bucks tier at least. Like I wouldn't put them on the Celtics tier yet.
So
but
last week we said we both agreed pretenders. Or at least they're not pretenders, but we can't put them in the contender category. Yeah. How about now?
I see it now. I think I see it a lot more now.
I have to say they are, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just that they've made such good moves, and I really respect what Leon Rose has got going on over there, man. Because it is.
They've just done everything
right. And it's not the typical New York Knick way, I don't think.
No,
if you're you would just think it's like, let's just go get a big three of stars and then hope that they can do good. That's just kind of what you think they would do. And it hasn't been that way at all. They've made controversial moves, bringing in Jalen Brunson to say, hey, we believe in you to be the stud. And everyone clowned him. And the mid three, they called it, of him and Barrett and Randall. They end up making a big trade. OG, I assume they'll give him the bag this offseason. I'd be shocked if they didn't. Being that they traded for him. So, yeah, I love what the Knicks did at this deadline. I would probably say they were the biggest winners of the deadline, I would say.
I would agree. I think that's fair. They're up there. I think that there's the other big winners to me, we can keep talking about the Knicks if you've got more to say.
We can move right on.
I was going to say, I think the Mavericks had a really good deadline. Just in the sense that I think some people thought that, I don't know, they're just kind of shuffling stuff around, and maybe that's true. But also, I think that they
upgrades. Though.
Yeah, I think that they made real upgrades, and it's a team that had to make some upgrades on the margins because, again, I mean, it's built around Luka and Kyrie, but especially Luka to such an extent that like those role players, anytime that you can get better at those spots, I think it's really important. I think the addition of Gafford has gone probably a little bit underrated. I think now you have a full 48 minutes of like real lob threat for Luka anytime he's in the game. I think Gafford is probably a bit more dependable than Lively, just because Lively's so young, and you want Lively to play because all the reps that he can get with Luka, you want him to get. But anytime, like if he gets into foul trouble or whatever, there is zero drop off at all.
You don't have to rely on Rashawn Holmes and Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleba.
Exactly, and I think Gafford's like a better big, definitely like a better roller than people give him credit for. Like he is very explosive, I think, and he's got pretty good touch and stuff. Like I'm excited to see that, as excited as you can be for Daniel Gafford, but I'm excited to see that in Dallas. I think him and Luka are going to be really good together, and I think that he helps their defense a little bit, just in the sense of, hey, now you have a real rim protector anytime Lively's out too, and that helps.
And at the end of the day, your goal has got to be to keep Luka happy with a competitive program. You know, like last year, obviously which ended up being a smart move where they kind of tanked it at the end of the year, missed the play-in. They get Derek Lively in the draft. But right now they're sitting as the 8th seed in the Western Conference at 29-23 when the 5th seed Phoenix Suns are 31-21. So, I mean, you really need to try to make some separation in this group of this lump of like teams in the play-in tier in the Western Conference. You want to make sure you're not in it because the Western Conference play-in tournament is going to be crazy. It's going to be super fun, and you don't want to be a part of it if you don't have to be. So I think that from that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Like you said, it was Gafford for Rashawn Holmes, and like technically a first-round pick. They like it was kind of complicated. They traded their swap in 28 to the Thunder for the swap worst of like 4 teams in this year's draft, traded that to Washington. And then they make another Washington. They make the PJ Washington trade with the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and their 2027 first-round pick. So the Mavericks don't own the rights to their pick from 2026 to 2030, which like I like the moves they made yesterday. Like from they got better standpoint for sure. Just a little bit worrisome of like you went all in with your future capital for PJ Washington, you know, and Daniel Gafford. I understand why they did it. You got to do something like that when you have Luka Doncic for sure. But they've just made a couple moves, you know, with the Porzingis move and even the Grant Williams. You gave up your 2030 first-round pick for Grant Williams, who you just gave up your 2027 to trade him away. Right. So it's definitely been a little bit of weird draft capital management from the Mavericks. But yeah, like PJ Washington is a major upgrade over Grant Williams for sure. So
I'm not a Grant Williams guy whatsoever. I think
did you see what Tim McMahon said about him on Brian Windhorst's podcast?
No, I didn't.
He said that like Grant Williams, like that was there was some major stuff going on there with him in Dallas. Like they were really trying to get rid of him because it was.
I heard that they
rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
I heard that, or I read that. I guess that it was just like Dallas just wants Grant Williams out of it, basically. And that's kind of 2 teams in a row that have done that to a degree. He just seems like the
him
worst
and Missoula,
vibes ever. He just seems like the worst vibes ever. And I saw somebody call him Fat Reggie Bullock, and since then I've been like, gosh.
He don't shoot it like Reggie Bullock, though.
He definitely doesn't.
That's a pretty funny. We'll see how much run he gets with the Hornets the rest of the season.
He should get some. Doesn't seem, I don't know, bad vibes in Charlotte.
Yeah.
No,
but
maybe.
I like what the Hornets have done this deadline. We can talk about the Gordon Hayward trade next. I just like that they finally, trading Rozier earlier this year, getting an extra first-round pick. They get a first-round pick for P.J. Washington. Gordon Hayward, who is viewed as a negative asset ever since you signed him, basically, from the contract standpoint, you got, stuff for him. It wasn't great stuff, but you got Trey Mann, who maybe can be, a guy in your rotation who got no run in OKC and was good his rookie season in OKC before he kind of was out of that rotation.
He's too good to not have a shot.
Exactly,
basically.
and he just doesn't really play in OKC at all.
He just fell behind, and it's not OKC.
Took on the Bertans contract, which we talked about that earlier. It's not the best contract to have on the books. You got Micic, which I heard a rumor that he's going to go back overseas to play.
Did you?
I don't know if that's real.
I tweeted jokingly, they traded him from Charlotte. He's definitely going back.
Oh, really? I didn't even see you
I didn't
that.
know.
Yeah.
So, but That wouldn't surprise me because he probably wants to play for a team that's competing. I like Micic.
Yeah, I know.
Genuinely,
You picked him with 6 man, didn't you?
I'm pretty look great.
I'm pretty sure you did.
If I did, that does
that's
look great.
so funny.
I probably did have him on the short list at least.
Yeah. But yeah, like I think I like what Charlotte did is from a like they finally chose to like get some capital and get something for their guys that have just been kind of lurking around there for a while. Obviously it's not anything that's going to be impactful right away, but
yeah.
They're letting B Miller kind of get some more run, which he's been really good this year. So
he has been good. Back to PJ Washington for a quick. I think like defensively, I think that it's weird because I felt like there were times last year when I would watch him on defense, I'd be like, oh, like there's versatility here and like it makes a lot of sense and like there's length and he's very athletic. But then this year and at times last year for sure too, it just like looks bad. Like it looks really bad. Like,
and it could just be a Charlotte as a whole thing. I think
like that's the hope, I guess, to me.
But also Dallas is not this defensive environment.
No, but I mean it's competitive. Like you're playing for something, you know? Like how many guys on Charlotte are giving a fuck on defense at all right now? Like none.
Caleb Martin or Cody Martin.
Maybe, yeah. Cody Martin.
That's about it.
Brandon Miller.
I get like
so respect to him.
Kinda.
But
PJ Washington, like, I think also like he brings a lot more rebounding wise than Grant Williams.
Brings more rebounding wise, and like he can do something with the ball.
Yeah,
you know, like you trust him to dribble. Like
didn't he almost have a 50 bomb? Like he had like 40 some points, I think, like a week ago.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
did he?
I'm pretty sure he did.
He definitely has had big games. He's a guy like they ran he got a lot of ball handler reps last year, like a ton of ball handler reps, and it was like, okay, so he's versatile and he definitely can do it. Not a guy that you want doing it a whole lot. Is kind of where I landed on it. But I do think he's an intriguing player. I definitely think he makes their offense a little bit better, like at least more, not so, what's the word, stagnant maybe? Like Grant Williams literally just standing there.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I think that he adds a little bit more versatility to that. He's got his own little flavor to add to the offense. So I think it was good for Dallas. But I do think his defense is going to be a really big deal. And if he can, like, be more consistent on that end at the very least, that would be really important.
Yeah. So going back to another trade that Charlotte made, the Gordon Hayward to OKC move. I like that OKC, like, finally, we just have talked about this for so long. Like, they just have so many young guys that don't play. Probably should trade some of them. Maybe trade some of their picks to get guys that can, help them on this playoff run. They don't trade any of their picks, which obviously they did like the weird trade with Dallas, which is a good trade probably to get that swap from them in 2028. You never know.
Agreed.
But yeah, they get Gordon Hayward to add into this depth that they already kind of have. Most of their depth is young guys at this point. But what do you like about Gordon Hayward, joining this Thunder team that currently is the 3 seed in the West?
I love it. Very simple upgrade to me. Like, he's just better than Josh Giddey right now, and teams actually care when he's on the court. And I think that he's a guy where, you don't necessarily have to start him. You don't have to invest anything into him getting the ball at any time, but he can close games when you need it, and he's going to make sound decisions.
Yeah.
He's going to, he's more so of sort of like a 4 now than, I guess it doesn't really but J-Dub now, I think, like, you can find more matchups for him. What's the better matchup for J-Dub? Gordon Hayward can guard up a little bit more than maybe Giddey could, or you trust him a little bit more defensively.
That's what I was kind of wondering, like if he starts over Giddey or not when this trade happened.
I don't know that he'll start right away.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll start right away. But I wouldn't be surprised come playoff time if
at least
he
closes or
see
whatever,
more Hayward than Giddey come playoff time. I'd imagine. Although Giddey has been playing a little bit better recently, but I do think that he is an upgrade. He's a guy that I expect to close some games for them. And yeah, I thought it was a great move for the Thunder, and I think that he'll be pretty important for their playoff run.
Moving on to probably the other biggest trade of the day from a player standpoint. Buddy Hield finally gets traded away from the Indiana Pacers, this time to Philadelphia. I already saw the tweets from his burner account or whatever, what's some good Philly food spots. Gets traded to the 76ers in exchange for Furkan Korkmaz, another guy who finally gets traded. This ended up being a 3-team trade. Doug McDermott gets sent from San Antonio to Indiana. And Indiana gets 2 second-round picks, and then the Spurs get Marcus Morris, and they also get a second-round pick. The 76ers also traded away Pat Bev to the Milwaukee Bucks. Interesting. I didn't really understand that one, I guess.
Neither did I.
Wouldn't you just rather have Pat Bev? He was having a pretty solid year.
He was. He definitely was.
He's better than Campaign, He is better than I didn't really understand that one.
I would agree with that.
But Philly, they lose Buddy Hield. Marcus Morris wasn't really playing, or they get Buddy Hield, they lose Pat Beverly.
Yeah.
Any opinion changed on Philly as far as the rest of the season outlook goes?
So I think that Buddy Hield brings to the Sixers is something that they need, which is 3-point volume. They just weren't getting enough up, I don't think. And they had a little bit of this problem last year, but it's especially clear this year. And I think that the volume is going to be really important, not only come playoff time, but throughout the regular season, just on the day-to-day. Like, you're just getting outshot every night. Like, you're kind of losing the math battle to an extent. And especially when Joel Embiid is not there to cover up that, I think it's been pretty apparent. So I think adding Buddy Hield, who's going to take a ton of threes and make a ton of threes, is really important for keeping their offense, like, at least respectable while Joel Embiid is missing time.
Yeah, and I always thought that the Buddy Hield situation was weird in Indiana. Like, he basically was in trade rumors the second he got there for his
He asked
full
for a trade this offseason.
Yeah, and they didn't move him, but like I thought he really fit what they had going on. They get up a lot of threes, they play fast, they get up shots fast. He totally fits that. Indiana definitely had like a weirder deadline, I guess. With acquiring Siakam a couple weeks ago and then basically downgrading from Hield to McDermott, got some second-round picks out of it. So, I guess if Hield really wanted out that bad,
right?
You got McDermott, who's another high-volume three-point shooter.
Yeah, just another guy you can't help off.
Yeah,
at all.
But yeah, I think that Philly, like, it's going to be exciting to see how much he changes their offense, I guess. And like you specifically said, with Joel Embiid out, Hield can help carry the load scoring-wise in Philly. Milwaukee getting Patrick Beverley. We've talked about all year. They don't have this defensive guy. How much is Pat Bev gonna impact that, do you think? Because obviously we know Pat Bev of a great defensive perimeter guard.
Yeah.
More of a tyrant than I would say like a true defender, I guess. Like just a hound.
A tyrant.
you know what I mean though? Like
he's definitely he's very good at annoying.
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
But I do he's their best perimeter defender, like role guy.
And he's gonna have to close games come playoff time, right?
Yeah, but I think he's fine with doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's not even scared about it or anything.
I bet he's excited about this opportunity.
I bet he is too. Surprised that Philly traded him to a guy that or to a team that they might see in the playoffs. That's kind of
he's gonna guard Maxey in a series.
Right, definitely. So I think that good move for Milwaukee. Does it change things a ton? I don't know, but I think it does make them better, and I think he's going to be pretty important because he does fill a role. Like, he is their stopper now, and he does a decent job against bigger guys, I feel like.
Yeah.
So he could, it's not just that he's going to guard Maxey. He'll probably guard 2s and 3s as well when they need him to, and I think that he's going to be seems like a great vibes guy for the team that he's on. So that's all good. Also, him and Thanasis probably talk some shit. That's what's up.
That's a good point.
Him and Dame hate each other. That was always a thing.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that Houston-Portland series years ago. Yeah,
it's carried on. Last year, they were talking shit at the free throw line, and then Pat Bev was slapping his watch because he got to stop.
But if Pat Bev and Russ could make up,
yeah, you're right. I think that they'll be fine.
Yeah,
I think that they'll be fine.
I think so.
There was that video. I don't know if you saw it, but right when Pat Bev got traded or whatever, he was on FaceTime with whoever, and then he was like, damn, I got to get my relationship right with Dame because we got to win the shit.
Okay, I saw he went live as soon as he got traded or
that's
whatever.
Funny.
But yeah.
I didn't. I don't know. Maybe that's where that video was from. I guess I'm not positive.
Yeah, well, because that podcast he does with Barstool, that Roan, who he does it with.
Yeah.
Roan was all because I think he's a Sixers fan. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's from Philly.
So he was totally super upset that trade happened.
Yeah.
But it's whatever. So a couple other trades that we don't have to spend too much time on. They're whatever trades.
No
the Toronto Raptors. What a weird.
This is weird. Yeah.
What a weird deadline. Even just a weird trading season because I think Masai made it clear that he doesn't really care about this draft pick capital that much when they made the OG trade because it was always. We're trading OG for 5 picks. We're trading OG for 4 picks.
Right.
And they traded him for no picks. They just got 2 good players.
Yeah.
And then in the Siakam trade, they get, I think 2 firsts in this draft specifically, Indiana's first, and then the swap worst of, 3 different teams. It's not going to be a first pick or a good first-round pick. That pick ends up being the trade that they move to the Utah Jazz in exchange for Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk, and then they move Otto Porter Jr. and Kira Lewis Jr. along with that late 20s first round pick, whatever. I think OKC is one of the teams. It's not going to be a good first round pick. Utah, like I said earlier, Danny Ainge, he hears first round pick. We're going to do it. Kind of relates to the, we're clearing up minutes for young guys. Ochai Agbaji was a guy that they, is going to be up for a new contract in a year from now.
Yeah,
so
after next season.
Yeah, so maybe if they didn't see a future with him, with the amount of young wings that they have, makes sense to move him now while you can because a first round pick is a first round pick at the end of the day. Kelly Olynyk, who's been like a solid role player.
I think
in
he's
Utah
really good.
for sure,
and very important to them. Like a lot of what they do on offense, I don't know how it'll work without Kelly. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, and then they make the other trade of probably the most pointless, weird trade I've ever seen, like literally in trade deadline history. Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young for Spencer Dinwiddie. And then the Raptors just waived Dinwiddie right away, which I was a little bit surprised by that.
There's got to be a reason.
But it made the trade. I saw that if Dinwiddie would have played like 5 more games, he would have met some contract incentive that gave him $5 million extra, and it would have sent Toronto over some limit or
like
whatever.
Luxury, yeah. Another luxury.
So they just waived him instead, so he couldn't get that bonus or whatever.
I guess that makes sense.
But, like, you had to have known that before you made the trade. So,
right.
like, you probably just planned on waiving him from the get-go.
Yeah, I guess.
Why not just waive Dennis Schroeder? I don't really know.
I'm sure that there's a reason. I just don't know.
There has to be something with the contracts.
I didn't look as deep
weird
into
deadline, though, from Toronto.
Totally, yeah. I was surprised by some of their moves. But, I mean, like, Kelly definitely makes them better. And Abaji, I think, if you just think of it as, like, you know, instead of a whatever late first-round pick we're going to try and develop, we'll just try and develop Abaji or see what he has. So that's kind of the risk that they're taking. I know his jump shooting is kind of falling off. It was pretty good early in the season, if I remember correctly. Like, he started the year pretty well, I feel like. But I know that now it's like sub 33%, so it hasn't been great. And that's kind of what he's there for.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was weird. Like, the Jazz moves were kind of weird to me, but they're always sort of, at least Ainge sort of is always looking into the future.
Yeah.
Like he was like, well, we're not going to win anything this season, so let's just kind of try and accumulate what we can.
Even when they've been pretty good, like this year, like better than, especially as of, you know, the last month or whatever, they've been really good. So definitely it doesn't surprise me what Utah did, like you kind of said, but at the same time, they were playing good. I kind of just expected nothing to happen from Utah's standpoint, and they made some bigger moves. I mean, basically 3 guys out of their current rotation are now gone. He fell out of the rotation. Yeah, that's true. But a guy that was in the rotation at least at one point this season.
Bryce Sensabaugh time, baby. Ice Bryce.
I hope so. I liked him a lot coming out of Ohio State. He was not your typical Big Ten guy. He was just a straight bucket getter. Yeah,
all 3 levels.
Fun to watch a guy.
Not all.
Like that.
He was an insane jump shooter. Yeah, like insane jump shooting numbers. So yeah, I'm in on Bryce.
Only other trade that I think really is substantial and it's not even that substantial, is the 3-team trade made between the Suns, Grizzlies, and Nets. Specifically just for the Suns, they get Royce O'Neal along with David Roddy.
Big body.
Big body David Roddy. Both of them can kind of play that, 4 wing position, defend, shoot threes. I mean, mainly Royce O'Neal.
I was going to say, Roddy, Roddy's got to make some jumpers here.
And then, like Chimezie Metu, Yuta Watanabe go to Memphis along with a pick swap, and Keita Bates-Diop, Jordan Goodwin, and a bunch of second-round picks go to Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, getting Royce O'Neal for Phoenix is a good ad.
It helps, yeah. He's sneaky short, but
yeah, he's only like 6'5" or
6'4",
right?
I think.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
I didn't even know he was that short. That's crazy.
Because people think of him as like
short. He's like a 4. Yeah,
yeah. That's what people.
Same with Roddy. Roddy's only like 6'6",
I think.
Yeah,
like
6'5", 6'6". He's not tall either. He's just huge.
Yeah. But I'm excited a little bit for the Royce O'Neal Sun stuff. I think that he's he's in the Josh Okogie bin to me, where it's just like, yeah, he's like he's out there and he's very much so a supporting piece and like glue guy and connector or whatever, like 5th option in any lineup. But he's just always doing stuff. Like, he's just very active. Yeah, I feel like. So I think like that could be good for the Suns, or maybe it could be a little bit bad, but it could be really good for the Suns. I gotta take the I thought KBD and Yuta were gonna be in the rotation. Just hasn't been.
I just kind of figured Yuta definitely would be, just from a shooting. Like, he shot the ball so well in Brooklyn a year ago, so I just kind of assumed that he would.
Yeah, Bobo's been playing.
Yeah, he has been.
He's been playing okay.
We all know our feelings on Bobo.
Yeah, fair. He's been playing pretty okay.
Yeah, not worst player in the NBA.
No, right.
I'd probably take him over James
The defense,
Wiseman.
like the numbers for the defense, look pretty good right now. For what it's worth. Something to monitor.
That's something for sure. Also, Philly.
Wait, real quick on Bobo. Did you see last night on TNT after they were showing the highlights of that game or whatever? Ernie was like, "You still think Bobo's as good as Wembanyama?" And Shaq was like, "Yeah, like he's as good as Wembanyama, yada yada." And then EJ was like, "Yeah, Bobo exploded for 6 points tonight."
Just making fun of him. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Shit, that's I like Shaq. Obviously, you love Shaq, but like he's just the most like. He was friends with my son, biased dude of all time. Yeah. Like,
and he's very like he thinks he's right. Like he said it, so like he's right,
exactly like the whole G.G. Jackson thing. Like when he blew up and he like was like this kid like he is gonna have such a crazy career. I'm not saying he's not, but like I'm pretty sure Sharif and G.G. they played on a team at some point when Sharif or
no, that doesn't.
Shakir. I mean,
I was gonna say that.
Because I remember seeing a picture at least of Shaq and G.G. when he was in high school playing AAU or whatever. So
maybe I don't know. It didn't seem like Gigi knows Shaq because after Gigi's first game in the NBA, they like interviewed him and he was like starstruck by talking.
Okay, then maybe I was wrong. I guess I don't know. But either way,
I'm not positive.
The Bol thing is still
a lot of it has to. But like people genuinely have that take and like are not friends with him. But like
I guess that's a good point.
It is what it is.
So yeah, that basically wraps up. The Sixers made another weird trade. They traded Jaden Springer to Boston, which that was a guy that we were both high on coming into this year.
Yeah, Boston added Springer and Tillman.
Oh yeah, I guess I forgot about the Tillman trade because that was like the very first trade of like Wednesday. Yeah,
right, and that's pretty nice for them. I think both guys are just kind of like stoppers that you can throw on whoever when you need to. Springer, he's just got to learn how to shoot, really, but he is a very good defender, and he's kind of like a freak athlete, low key. And Tillman is similar. Like Tillman can guard up quite a bit. I don't want to say guard up, I guess, because he is a 5, but he's small.
Yeah.
But he could guard up, like he could guard big wings. You can throw him on 5s and stuff, and he'll do a pretty good job. So I think both of those are good guys for like a team like Boston
that doesn't have a lot of wiggle room either. You know.
Yeah, and both got like you can see how both of them could be useful if necessary.
Right.
So I think Boston had a sneaky good deadline.
Yeah, I think I like the X-Men ad a lot. He had a couple good performances in the playoffs last year in that series against the Lakers. So definitely can step up in those big moments. But him and Jaren Jackson, the Spartan Dogs, are split up, which
unfortunate.
That's a little bit sad. Okay, Matt, before we end today's episode, I have 2 questions for you. Okay. So we had 2 Pistons legends traded away in Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. They joined the Pistons legend category. We got to end off with like a slight trivia because this is random.
All
right. So I'll start off with the easier one because the second one is harder. Can you name me all the teams that Bojan Bogdanovic has played for in his career?
All right. So we've got the Jazz, the Nets.
Correct.
Pacers.
You're missing 2 more.
Pistons,
yes. Just missing 1 more.
Who am I missing?
This one's definitely the hardest one. This was his second team, I believe. Let me check here. Yeah, so he played here for a year between Brooklyn and Indy. Actually, no, played for half a season, got traded at the end of his time in Brooklyn to this team, signed with Indiana. So there's a reason why you forget it. Only played 26 games here.
Oh my gosh.
It's definitely like pretty
What year
random.
did he play there?
This would have been in 2017 season. Traded from Brooklyn to this team.
It's like a little bit before I was locked in on League Pass.
Right. But then he like went to Indiana and just like killed it. Like broke out for the Pacers. In the Paul George injury season.
Ooh.
I can give it to you if you want.
Yeah, sure.
It's the Wizards.
Oh, it is the Wizards. Yeah, all right. Now I can
Wizards.
see him in the jersey. Damn.
Yeah, I mean
Totally.
that's the hardest one though. And now we move on to the much harder guy in Alec Burks. Can you name me every team that Alec Burks has played for in his career?
So there's the Knicks, the Jazz.
There is the Knicks, the Jazz, correct. Jazz, 8 seasons with the Jazz.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Which is almost like, I don't remember anything.
That was he was on the Jazz his whole career and then went to a bunch of different teams for like half a year.
Right. Oh, where else was he?
But a year and a half on the Pistons. So
yep, Pistons. How many more teams are there?
So you got Utah, Knicks, Pistons, right? Yep. Is the 3 that you got. You're missing 1, 2, 3, 4 teams.
Jesus.
I personally remember 2 of these teams. I wouldn't have gotten 2 other ones.
Was he on the Lakers for a second?
Was not on the Lakers. You're kind of
thinking of Jody Meeks.
Dude, that's actually hilarious. I see a lot of Jody Meeks and Alec Burks.
He wasn't. I'm like, that's a lot of teams.
So
I'm
the
running
teams
through the whole Western
okay,
Conference.
so here's the reason. The 2 teams that I wouldn't have gotten is because he got traded from Utah in his last season there to this team, and then got traded again at the deadline to another team. So he was on 3 teams in 1 year. One of them was Utah, and then he went and signed with another team, and then got traded to another team the following year. So he was on 5 teams in 2 seasons.
Oh, jeez. Who was on the Alec Burks run? I've definitely looked at like his basketball reference
you would
before
know,
and just like thought.
One of these teams. He was on a historically bad team one year.
Oh, he was on Philly. He was on Philly. He was on Philly.
Yes,
I remember
he was on Philly. Only played 18 games there. The team that he was traded to
Was
Philly.
he on historically bad Philly?
No.
Okay,
He was on Philly in 2020 in bubble year Philly. But
What year was he drafted?
He was drafted in 2011.
Okay.
So I mean he's been around. He's been around the block. Been in the league longer than Bogdanovich, just from a
I knew he was old.
because obviously Bojan was.
I was trying to think, like, did he sneak on the Bobcats? But
No. Like the team he was historically bad on was when he got traded to Philly. He was on this really bad team, traded, but they're historically bad because they weren't supposed to be historically bad, and then got traded to Philly.
They're historically bad because they weren't supposed to be.
Like they weren't supposed to be bad, and they were so bad.
I hear you. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm trying to think of who that matches up with. It's not the Lakers, but that has been the case for them a couple times.
They do kind of fit that same mold there. Averaged 16 a game for this team before getting traded to Philly.
What year?
2019, 2020 season.
Okay.
So, like, when COVID happened, basically.
Right. Yeah. See, when you say 2020, like, I think of the Sixers when you tell me that era of Alec Burks, I feel like. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have
I can give it to you.
Yeah, go for it.
The Warriors. He was on the terrible Warriors team.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
With like Glenn Robinson and all them dudes. Yeah, he was on that squad.
I can kind of picture it, and the Warriors were in my head, but I wasn't. I thought that I was.
Those were the ones that I would have gotten.
I thought I was thinking of Jody Meeks again.
These other two, though, would never have gotten. In 2018-19 season, so the season before this, played first 17 games with Utah, then got traded to Cleveland, where he played 30 games, and then at the deadline got traded to Sacramento, where he played the final 13 games.
I don't remember him in Cleveland or Sacramento.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember him there at all. And he was actually pretty...
You say, like, I remember Golden State now.
Started 24 games for Cleveland, like in 2019. So they wouldn't have been good.
No, they would have terrible.
I just don't remember that at all. So... Yeah, that's
right
your daily trivia.
Post LeBron.
Right post LeBron. Yeah, definitely the worst time to be there.
Yeah, I was no chance I was watching any of those games at that time.
He was with Colin Sexton and them.
Right.
So is there anything else, Matt, that you want to get off your chest before this episode ends?
Anything else I want to get off my chest? I don't think so.
What are you looking forward to the most for the post-trade deadline rest of NBA season? Doesn't even have to be Pistons related. Just in general, what are you looking forward to watching before the playoffs starts?
That is a good question. I think. I'll say the Mavericks. I think a little bit because that's still a team where they haven't had any continuity throughout the season. Like they're still trying to build that. I think I heard that they don't have any lineups with more than something like they haven't had the same lineup.
I mean, it makes sense. They change their starting lineup all the time.
They change their starting lineup all the time. Kyrie's in and out. Like there's a ton of it. The bigs are like Lively's in and out a little bit. Kyrie obviously, but so they're still trying to build continuity. Like I think that they're still trying to learn how to play together. So I think that's probably the one thing I'm going to navigate. And the other thing is the Timberwolves. I think trying to figure out what they end up with their rotation because like Kyle Anderson's been really really bad. That's a big subplot for them. Yeah, shout out Slow-Mo. And
got Monte Morris though.
Mike Conley's starting to look a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's why they got Monte Morris.
I think that might be why.
But they got Nas still, so like
they do. I don't want Monte to take Nas minutes, to be honest.
And that's kind of what I like. Nas brings that defensive intensity.
Yeah, he does.
Dude, the other day when they were playing the Thunder, this was like a week ago, I think. Him and Shea had the same accessories going, which like I just thought that was
awesome.
Like they each had the headband and like the little wrist like armband going on, and I just thought it was so funny because like
that is awesome.
And they like Nas was guarding.
Cousins.
Yeah, like Nas was guarding Shea. I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Excited for Olympic basketball this summer. I
also am.
That's something that I've got circled.
Do we know the full roster? We know like the group of players they're choosing from, but I don't think they've announced the full roster.
No, I don't think we'll get that. I don't think we'll get that to a lot closer.
Not even in the consideration.
No, but a lot of young guys aren't really.
Yeah.
But what hurts is that Grant Hill picked it.
Yeah.
Couldn't throw us a bone.
Oh, that's true. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
But there should be some good things to compete with, and I'm not a big Olympics guy, but the basketball.
Yeah. And if you're a Pistons fan and you have boycotted this season, I understand. Tune into the Pistons.
Come back, bro.
Come back. We got a different team. It's completely different. There's what?
It should look different.
8 guys on the team.
At the very least, you'll get a better
understanding of what the future
you'll
looks
be able,
like.
You'll be watching Cade and Ivy, those guys, in like a real context.
And
that
like
makes
Grimes
sense.
and Grimes 100% will be here next year.
Yep.
95% Fontecchio will be here next year. Like
unless things look bad.
He's
like
a free agent, restricted free
bad.
agent. So like maybe a team just like gives him a bag for no reason, and we're like, nah. Which I don't think it'll happen. But so those are two guys that'll be here next year as well. Like we have a core for the most part that we at least are building around, and then we're going to continue to add to it.
Yep.
It sounds like Tobias Harris still is the guy that the Pistons are going to be targeting this
There's
offseason.
There's not a ton out
There's
there.
not,
really.
and most of it's probably going to have to be done via trade, which I don't even know who would be available via trade. We'll see. But yeah, tune into the Pistons.
Agree.
There's what, 8 guys left on the team that were here before the deadline, I think?
It can't. Is it even that?
Cade, Ivy, Asar, Stu, Duran, Sass.
Muscala.
Should we count Muscala from the beginning of the year? Wiseman. That's 7. I think that's it. I have the whole roster written down right here. I believe that. I mean, like, I'm not counting a Mude just because.
Maybe like a Mude.
Yeah, that's it. That's crazy.
Sheesh.
Shout out Troy Weaver.
Lock in though. Sasser's looking really good.
Sasser looks really good.
Really
I'm
good.
really excited for him and Grimes to be back because
shooting over 40% on pull-ups.
They had a lot of success in college as well.
Yeah, they did.
All right, Matt. Thank you for joining this week's episode.
Thank you for having me.
It was a great time to recap the trade deadline. Obviously, we will have Matt back on in the near future, especially once playoffs come around for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. We're out. Peace.